streaming from different parts of the province and the country. So my name is Songezo Zibi. I'm from Kanduli, in the OR Tambo District Municipality in general, and KSD Municipality in particular. I grew up here. Actually, I went to high school, the last 2 years of my schooling, just up the road at All Saints College in Bisho. It's a police college these days. But that's where I did my standard 9 and standard 10 in the early 1990s. I voted in 1994, so I've been around for quite some time. Although some people say that's not true, but I did. I voted in 1994. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk specifically about what's in the book because I'd like us to have a conversation. I'm going to talk about why I wrote the book. I'm going to talk about why I wrote about the things I wrote about in the book. And I'm also going to share some of the backstory of how the book came about and the different conversations that I had with different South Africans so that we can have the conversation. I'm assuming that at least for most of you, you'll get the book outside and you'll get an opportunity to read it yourself. So I love writing. I didn't realize I love writing until I started doing it. My English teacher is actually supposed to come here, so I expect him here anytime. I love writing, and I rather write about other things actually, not politics. Although I love following politics because it is important to how you shape and determine the future, the present and the future of any country or society. But I've had to write about politics in this book because our country is in deep trouble. We must be frank about it. It's in deep trouble, and I'll talk about the different ways in which our country is in trouble. So apart from the fact that the lights really could go off while we're here, which is a very serious thing. I remember in the late 1990s reading in the Daily Dispatch, this Daily Dispatch, about rolling blackouts in Zimbabwe. We didn't have electricity in Mkanduli then. I think we got electricity around 2008, thereabouts. But there was this concept of blackouts in Zimbabwe because they couldn't sustain their own electricity supply. And it seemed like something that was out of the books because I couldn't conceive it. And there was a time, and many of us will remember, whenever someone attempted to make the comparison with Zimbabwe, people would get angry. They would get angry because it seemed too similar to what white people who were upset about democracy used to say. And so we didn't want to confront the truth and ask whether there is any sliver of truth in what people are saying. Is there a potential for it? And the nature of human beings is that when we get told, for those who have children, you keep telling a child not to stick their hand in the heater or the fire, they keep doing it. And then eventually they burn themselves and then they start crying. That's how we are as human beings. We never want to see what's really happening. We never want to accept it for what it is. We always want to take the optimistic view that it's going to get better. So clearly it has not. It has not got better. So apart from the lights, I also sometimes see on social media that here in Buffalo City, sometimes the water that comes out of the tap is dirty. Okay, that's not a good thing. It's not a thing to get used to. If you come from where I come from, we actually have no running water in any event. And it's not normal for people to not have running water. And so these are the things we do. We will swear at Helen Zille on Twitter about the sanitary conditions in the informal settlements of the Western Cape, but we will not be outraged at the same thing back where we come from. So I come from a village. So everyone in South Africa should have a flush toilet. Everybody. Everybody. There is nothing about living in a village that says you should not have one. Everybody should have it. But we don't. We need to think about why that does not bother us. Because if we are to be consistent, it must bother us in the Western Cape, and it must bother us in the Eastern Cape or the Free State and other places. Because we are people of principle. So we must think about why that principle is important. I'm saying this for a reason, because I'm getting somewhere with it. And don't worry, I won't make a long speech. I'll be done soon, so we can have a conversation. But that's just one example that I want to talk about. I also want to talk about something like unemployment. So this is the nature of unemployment in South Africa. In the latest quarterly labor force survey, like many others, but they've taken particular care to break down the percentage of the unemployed, to categorize them. So 50.1 or 50.2% of people who are unemployed do not have matric. They have not gone past matric. So Lukona here, who's a researcher, will tell you about the throughput rate, or Mku there at the back, will tell you about the throughput rate of children who enter the school system, do not die, but they don't come out at the end after 12 years. Those children end up being part of that 50%. About 40% of the unemployed only have matric and nothing else. And when I say nothing else, they can't even do people's hair. Not that that's not important, but really they've got nothing else. So that means 90%, just over 90% of the unemployed either have matric or have no matric. Okay. So let us then shift and imagine Ibrahim Patel talking about how we're going to create jobs. Does he mention this problem? So let me complete the statistic. Unemployment for those people that have a post-matric qualification is in the single digits. It's less than 10%, as you've already worked it out. It's still a lot of people, because in other countries, all of unemployment is 4 or 5% anyway, right? But it gives you an idea of the picture. So this is what happens to people who are unemployed. First of all, it hurts their dignity. Because people don't like handouts, they don't like depending on other people. They want the ability to provide for themselves, to do things for themselves, so that they can be men and women who are proud of what they do. So we deprive them of that ability. That's the first thing. The second thing is that work is like anything. So one of the things I do very well, I may not look like it, but you see, you will not get many people who are better than me. But I started at age 7 with my grandfather. I can hold a 15-minute tutorial here. And be straight. So I can do it. But I started early. So this is what happens. When you don't get an opportunity to work, it's like anything. You do not develop the muscle and the ability to do this thing efficiently and get better at it. And so you have a situation where for the people who are up to age 35 years old, the unemployment is 60% thereabouts. So that means over time, we will have the majority of the working population not having the experience to work. That means we can't grow this economy, because you need people who can. So it's like taking someone from a Mkanduli football club and try and put them in the Champions League, because that's where the rest of the world is, to compete, so that we can grow this economy against other countries who are also trying to do the same. So if people do not have the opportunity to work as early as possible, it means whatever a minister or somebody stands in front on a podium and says they're going to do is really actually meaningless for most people. Because they talk about the jobs that require qualified people. Right? We're going to encourage beneficiation and do all of these things. Right? Okay, fine. You will do it for the people that have passed matric and have a skill. What about the people actually that we have not been able to keep in school and make sure that they pass? What about those people? We have no plan for them. Nothing. There is nothing. The public works program is not a real thing. Let's not kid ourselves. It doesn't teach somebody much. It doesn't. Right? So you've got that kind of problem. I'm gonna make two more points and then I'm going to shut up. I also reflected on the state of our society as a whole. So, let us reflect on, I'll come to the political, but let's talk about the personal. If somebody approaches any of you here and asks you to help them to commit a crime, the thing that's going to bother you is, what is it about me that made you think you can come to me to help you with this? What did I ever do to give you this impression that you can do this? Right? That's what you're going to think. That's what's going to offend you. Okay. So park that. You then have people who have been mired in scandal for stealing. And let's be Africans now. Alifunwa isela in African culture. If ulisela, you steal. You are the lowest of the low morally. Right. And yet you have people who have stolen, who have facilitated stolen, believing that we are the kind of people who will elect them to leadership and accept them. So here's my question. What have we done to give them the impression that they can go for it? What have we done? Clearly, we have given them the impression that this is okay. So what have we done? So I also write about the ethical and moral fiber of our society and what has happened to us. Why are we these people? So what makes Zweli, who has been mired in the kind of problems that he has, to say, I also want to be president? Why do we give him that impression? So clearly we have done so. So we also need to look within ourselves to see what we've done. And so, as my last or maybe second last point, because I can never stop when I say 5, then I mean 6. So what I have done is I've spent a significant part of the book reflecting on the last 27 years of democracy. So we've had democracy for as long as Madiba was in prison. And so reflecting on the last 27 years and what's working and what's not working. Usually what's really important to talk about is the thing that's not working. Because if you choose to only talk about the things that work, one day your house is going to collapse. Right? But that's what has happened for a very long time. People say, oh yeah, but you are so negative. Why don't you focus on the positive and so on? Well, the lights are going off now. Right? We've been focusing on the positive the entire time. In Gabecha, they don't have water. People go for days without washing. They don't have water. That's a reality. In Aliwal North, the problem is going on for much longer. So I've reflected on the last 27 years. And that's because I also realized some of the things we wanted to do to solve a particular set of problems. So I see in the room there are people who look like they voted in '94 also. So I'll go down memory lane a little bit. And, you remember in 93, 94, and we have a white South African in the room, so he might remember this or know people. But you remember when there were genuine fears that minorities might be abused and killed by the communists who are coming in from outside. So black people might do things to minorities. So some people stocked water and canned food and so on in anticipation of the coming thing, and stocked weapons and so on. So we ended up with this proportional representation system. Also, as part of another compromise, I don't know how many people remember the Concerned South Africans group, which had Opa Gozo and Mango Sutu and Mangope and Constant Viljoen and so on, right? The guys wanted a federation in South Africa. In fact, the IFP nearly didn't take part in the election. If you look at pictures of the old ballot, but I remember because I voted, the ballot paper, which was very long, had the Soccer Party and the Kiss Party and everything. At the bottom, it had the Inkatha Freedom Party pasted on because the IFP nearly didn't participate in the election, right? So we ended up with a proportional representation system. The reason this was done was to make sure that even if you got your Amishan Rajbansi and you were representing Indians in your mind, you still had a vote and everybody would feel represented. So we'll ditch the constituency system, because if we use it, then the ANC might dominate and then really come for minorities and kill them. So let's be nice people and say we're going to have a proportional representation system. Right. And then South Africa was called a miracle because we didn't descend into an orgy of violence and kill each other. Great. Except now, we have things called deployment committees and party lists and so on, and political parties that can ignore you, and a president who can say, hey, where my me, and not give a shit what the rest of the population thinks, because you can actually do nothing about it. Doesn't matter how much you complain, you can do nothing about it. So that's what that system gave us. So let me ask, how many of you here know where your constituency office for the person who supposedly represents you in parliament or the legislature? I'm not going to ask you to stand up. Just put your hand up and say, I know who represents me in parliament. Okay, nobody. Nobody does. Or maybe one or two, I don't know, I didn't see a hand, but really nobody does. Okay, so let's think about it. A representative system where you don't know who represents you, you don't know. And they will deploy someone from 600 kilometers away to a constituency here where they know nobody. How does that make any sense? It doesn't. It doesn't make any sense. So we have to think about what's working and what's not working. What we know is that that system doesn't work. It doesn't work because the system is supposed to work like this. The government executive, i.e. government, the president and premiers, are supposed to be overseen by those who sit in parliament or the legislature. The people that sit in parliament are, in the end, really chosen by the people they're supposed to oversee. Right, so how good a job do you think they're going to do? In all seriousness. Because if you make too much noise, you'll just get redeployed to your couch at home. As it has happened to lots of different people who took their jobs as MPs too seriously. So what we then know is that this system, as we have conceived it, is not working. So we've got to change it. So I do talk in the book about what we must change and how we must change it. My sister is here. And how we must change it. So that's just one example. And the last point I want to make is the following. That we have believed a lie, one, and secondly, just out of our history that we've just come out of, that leadership is a special thing. That unless you are a Madiba or so, there's a special anointing that you need to have in order to be a leader. Now, let me disabuse all of us of that notion. So I was talking to Loza this morning, and we're talking about this. And I said, that notion is false Because you see, a country is a home. It is a home. We all belong here. We live here. And by the way, a reality is that unlike Zimbabweans who were able to run here, when this country crashes, where are we going to go? To Lesotho. Where are we going to go? Okay, so we can try join the Guptas in Dubai without the money. But where are we going to go? We have nowhere else to go. I don't have anywhere else to go. And so it's no different to what we have to do in our families and our homes. That when things are not going well, we have to step up and fix them. Nobody in the context of our homes calls you a leader. It's about fixing izinto zekhaya. Right, it's about fixing izinto zekhaya. That's it. And what I'm saying is that we must fix izinto zekhaya. And when you do that, if there is a cousin or relative opoxayo, you kick them out of the meeting. We know this. So who told us not to apply this principle in the case of the country? Because you see, democracy is not a foreign concept to us as Africans in that sense. But what do we hear? We hear people saying that this constitution is a problem, we must do away with it, and that sort of thing, because they want to create an excuse for the things they have not done. They've run out of all the excuses. It's now the constitution that is a problem. And if you get rid of the constitution, which by the way means then we can stay in power forever. Because this constitution that says you must have human rights, you must have the Bill of Rights and so on, is the problem. My question is, for who? Is a problem for who? Because the only thing that has prevented absolute disaster for most people is that the courts have been able to say, no, you will give the people the HIV drugs, you will give them. This same constitution has said housing is a basic right. You will build houses for people as a basic right. This constitution has said people must have equal marriage rights. This same constitution. And yet people clap today when politicians say this constitution is a problem. So let me go back to that question I had before I shut up. Can we reflect on what we're doing that gives these people the sense that they can take us for granted and treat us like idiots when we're grown up? And that we believe ourselves to be children instead of ukulungisa izinto zekhaya. And so what I do here is that part of it is saying what's wrong, and the rest of it is saying the kind of things we must do ukulungisa izinto zekhaya. But there's no election in ukulungisa izinto zekhaya. You don't need to be elected. You need to get up and do it. Because you know, otherwise it's tickets, the family. And we must not be discouraged, especially up at Pondwe. And we must be honest. We won't say, I'll ask Keith not to point the cameras at you when we talk, if things are going to get interesting when you get back to the office. So you can talk off camera, right? But I want to say, we are the province of Nelson Mandela and Oliver Tambo. Do we really measure up to that legacy? I don't think we do, but we can. So, let me shut up.
Yes.